Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas that is a byproduct of combustion found in engine exhaust. It's highly toxic to humans and can be deadly. In 2017, shortly after takeoff, air traffic control became unable to contact the pilot of a Mooney because he had lost consciousness. Medical tests revealed that he had dangerously elevated levels of carbon monoxide. An examination of the airplane found cracks in the exhaust muffler, which had allowed exhaust gas containing carbon monoxide into the cockpit.
My name is Dan Bass, and in early February 2017, I had to make a trip from Winona, Minnesota to Thunder Bay, Canada. Departed early in the morning, and it was a 2.5-hour flight. It was very cold. I had to run my heater on the entire time. The flight was uneventful. The last 10 minutes or so, I started to get a slight headache. And once I landed, secured the airplane, I ran into the FBO because of the cold. And I experienced a little bit of a kind of a butterfly anxiety feeling. Throughout the day while I was conducting my business, my headache would come and go. I thought it might have been caffeine related, so I had coffee at lunch and it seemed to remedy it. Later in the afternoon, I was on the return flight and I departed Thunder Bay for Duluth, Minnesota to clear into customs back in the United States. That flight was about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Again, the heat was full on, but it was totally uneventful. I had no symptoms, I felt good. Once I exited the airplane in Duluth, I immediately got a headache. I quickly cleared customs, used the restroom, called my wife, and then ran back to the plane to get it started before I had a chance to cool down. And once I got it started, I sat in the plane and I filed my flight plan and tidied things up, waited for my flight plan to be approved in the system. Once it was, I contacted ground and got my departure clearance. Then taxiing out for departure, I had another episode of kind of a butterflies like I experienced in the morning. This time was a little more pronounced. Lasted only about 10 to 15 seconds, and I still had a mild headache. And once I got to the run-up area, the headache went away and I no longer felt butterflies. And I thought at the time I was feeling completely normal. But I became hyper-focused and I ran my pre-takeoff checklist 3 or 4 times. And it was long enough that I was sitting in the run-up area that the tower contacted me and asked if I was ready to go. And I replied that I would be in a few minutes. And I finished my checklist and then said I was ready for departure. Once climbing out, when I put up the landing gear, the butterfly feeling returned for briefly, another 10 to 15 seconds, and then it subsided. I turned on to heading, and from this point, things started to get a little blurry. My memory sort of escapes me. I know I made a few other radio transmissions back and forth with ATC. I was handed off to departure. That radio transmission, I remember slurring a little bit, and also that I was thinking to myself I needed to return to the airport. The next thing I remember, I was waking up and I thought I was still flying, so I was keying the mic, trying to talk to air traffic control and let them know that I was okay and I needed to land. And while I was doing this, I noticed that my windscreen was very, very clear and much clearer than normal. And that's when I did realize it was missing and I was actually on the ground in a field. I had a loud ringing in my ears. I was very weak, I was very confused. I was able to get myself out of the airplane and eventually make my way to a nearby farmhouse for help. In hindsight, all my symptoms that day were caused by carbon monoxide poisoning. I didn't recognize it at the time. The week leading up, my daughter was sick. I assumed that I was getting what she had. I didn't start the day with caffeine like I normally do. I thought it could have been a caffeine headache. The anxiety and butterflies that I was feeling, I attributed to anxiety over properly clearing into the Canadian customs and also back into the US customs. The biggest takeaway is once you're exposed to carbon monoxide poisoning or carbon monoxide, you no longer can trust your judgment. So the only thing we as pilots can do is to equip ourselves with carbon monoxide detectors that have both an audible and a visual alarm.
Key points are that early symptoms are often overlooked and mistaken for another illness. Don't rely on symptoms to alert you to a problem, because often by the time you're having symptoms, it's too late to help yourself. If your detector goes off or you think you've been exposed to carbon monoxide, turn off the heater, maximize fresh air into the cabin, notify air traffic control of your concerns, and land as soon as possible. You and your passengers should then seek emergent medical attention. Talk to your mechanic about exhaust system inspections. Many piston engine airplanes are heated by air that has been warmed by air around the exhaust using a heater shroud. Leaks in the muffler can bring carbon monoxide into the cockpit, and doing an in-depth inspection requires removing the cowling and shroud and may require removing the exhaust system from the engine. The best way to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning is to have a detector that will alert you to a problem, buying you time to take action and save you and your passengers' lives.